Hey, what's up? It's Wick for WickieMedia Tutorials, and today I'm going to take a look at gating on drum recordings. So I've got this drum recording lined up here in my project already, and you can see this consists out of 11 tracks. I've got 3 microphones on the kick drum, I've got 1 on the hi-hat, then I've got 3 on the snare, 2 overheads, and then I've got 2 microphones on each tom, 1 for the floor tom and 1 for a rec tom. So that's the setup that I've got. I'll play it to you so you can hear what the drums are like. I've got a little bit of resonance from the toms, which are resonating along with the kick drum and the snare drum, so that's something I'll deal with later. So I'll just mute these 2 at first. You can hear it starts sound a lot cleaner. You can hear that annoying ring is gone. I'll just start by gating a little bit on the kick drum. A lot of people don't say that they don't prefer using gates because it changes the sound of their kick drum, which it really shouldn't if you just set it up right. I'll preview this middle one. This has got quite some attack. I'll enlarge it so you can see really what the waveform looks like. You can see these big peaks are the kick, and then we've got these small peaks in between, which are really the spill from the snare drum and perhaps some hi-hat. So I want to just isolate the kick from the rest. So I'm going to go to my inserts on my track, and I'm going to browse for dynamics, and I'm going to use the standard gate, which is in Cubase. And you can perfectly follow along if you're working in Pro Tools or Audition or Logic or Ableton, as long as you've got inserts available, and you should at least have a gate or an expander in there. But I think most of the manufacturers at least have a gate or an expander pre-installed with their software. And the gate works like a gate works. It has a threshold, and all the parameters normally are the same. Well, this one has a little bit of a filter for sidechain options, these type of things. And then I've got this attack, hold, release. So these are really the most traditional settings you can find on the gate. What I always do is I always put my threshold the highest. So I would basically put it somewhere here. So it's going to be constantly muted. Then I'm going to lower the threshold, basically viewing that as lowering the threshold until it reaches these peaks but doesn't get triggered by these small peaks. That's basically what I'm looking for. So always start on the top. Then I'll play it. Well, that's a phantom kick. Sometimes it does that. Well, this is really what I'm looking for. You could see there's a little bit of a gap between these kick and snare. You can hear that this did not trigger the gate, even though we do hear this snare really in the back. That is because it is in the tail when the gate is closing. That's why we can hear it a lot softer. So what we need to do is we need to change the release and the hold. I'll just make the hold faster and make the release a little bit faster as well. So that means it will be closed before it actually reaches a peak there, which it does now. So I just made the release a little bit faster. I could play around with the attack. Sometimes I get a little bit more attack back from the kick. Really depends on what the recording allows and what the mix is that you're putting it in. And if you got a really heavy bass line, so you want some more punch on the kick, then you could play around with that too. Sometimes it gives a really hard peak when the attack is too fast. In that case, when it sounds too abrupt, you probably want to have it at least around 2, maybe even a little bit longer, 3 milliseconds. So now it's a little bit more round. I'll keep it around 1. So that seems to work. I'll go to the top kick drum because I've got 3 tracks of kick drum, so I'll check out the top one. I'll expand that as well. So we can see again we've got these large peaks which represent the kick drum itself, and then we've got the snare spill. You can hear this is a totally different sound. I'm going to use the C1 gate now. This is a gate which is from Waves. You can install this onto Logic as an audio unit. You can install this onto Pro Tools as an RTAS or TDM plugin. And you can use it on Cubase or Ableton or on Audition when you use it as a VST plugin. And you can find all the formats on waves.com. If I put again my threshold, which is this blue button right here, you can see this is called Gate Open, or this represents the threshold. They just gave it another name. I'll put it again on the top, so really you could visualize the threshold being here, so everything is below the threshold, so basically everything is being attenuated. Again, I'm going to lower this until I get opened by the kick. Attack a little bit faster and increase that release and hold time just to have it a little bit more open time. You can hear I get more of this body part right here. I can actually increase that hold time a little bit longer. So now I've got pretty much the original dynamic of the kick drum at least, and I'm still muting the spill in between. Then I've got a third kick drum, which I'll also do for this tutorial, and again I can show you. There's quite amount of spill on this track, and you can see it here. These are closer together, these peaks. Especially if I would for example, EQ this track, I would change the sound of the snare because of the spill. If I would give this a heavy EQ, let's say around 4 kilohertz, really look for that attack part. You can hear I'm really boosting. I'll boost it even more so you can really hear what I mean. I'm changing the sound of the snare. Well, when it's not gated, I still have that little bit of snare, which is spill, but I still have it in my mix. And this could a little bit influence the sound of my snare in the mix. So I like to gate my kicks because I want to EQ my snare just with the snare track and not by changing the sound of the kick drum. So I'm going to again look for dynamics. I'll just use the standard gate. Again, put the threshold all the way up. Make that release a little bit shorter. And I'm there already. Here. If I have the attack too fast, you can hear that spike. That's not something I want either, so I'll just put this around 1 millisecond. And that sounds a lot more natural. So now if I would play all 3 of the kick tracks, 1, 2, 3. I've removed most of the background spill. If there is any spill left, then it's really in the tail of the gate closing. Well, you have to play around a little bit with that to get the sound that you're looking for. But I think this is pretty decent. So now if I would EQ, for example, this kick drum, I'm mainly EQing the kick drum. You can hear, especially with this middle one, I really get that nice punch. Especially when you got a heavy bass going on, this could really help you out, getting that to punch through the bass. So that works pretty good. You need to be careful when you're going to be using a gate or expander and compression on the same track. So I'm going to look at this snare track right here. I'll enlarge it so we can see what's going on. These peaks are the snare. I can play it back here. So this spill is all from the kick drum, and we don't need that. Well, imagine we're going to use a compressor and a gate on the same track. Well, if I'm going to use a compressor, I'm actually going to squash these peaks. So these peaks are going to be smaller. If I'm going to use a gate after my compressor, it's going to be really hard for my gate to get triggered just by that snare drum. It will most likely be triggered by the spill as well. In the case if we want to compress the snare as well, then we first want to use the gate. So we isolate the snare from the rest of the spill, and then we're going to compress, and we're actually just compressing on the snare. So we're sure that it will work. And if we do it the other way around, we're going to make the life of the gate very hard, and it's going to be really hard to set the gate exactly. So that's a good tip if you're going to be compressing and gating on the same track. I'm going to scroll down to my toms because they're a little bit of a problem. In this case, the guy just plays them once, so the easiest way to gate him would be basically to cut him, but that's not what I'm showing you today. I'm going to be showing gate. So imagine that this guy would play the toms 40 times in the track or whatever. Then it's going to be a lot more difficult to have him cut correctly. Well, I can show you if I play these two tracks. There's quite some resonance from the rest of the drums playing along, so it's really going to clean up my drum track when I get that gated properly. So I'm going to go to my dynamics again. I'm going to use the standard gate, and I'm going to start all the way from the top. Make sure that it doesn't get triggered by this spill right here. A little bit lower. So that's pretty good. Probably want to have it a little bit longer. You can hear the crash already, a little bit blending, but yeah, that's really in the sound of the tom. You can see really the tail of the tom, and that's where the crash occurs of the cymbal. So that yeah, well, I have to live with that. There's no other way to do that. But at least I got a decent tail on it. So as it's going to be quiet throughout the track, I'll just play it through quickly. You can see the output remains silent, so that's good, and we just have that one hit. So I'm going to go to the second track, make sure that's in solo. That's always the best to work on gates in solo, or if you're going to be confused by what other tracks do. I could use, well, I'll just use the same gate. Again, put the threshold all the way up. And then I'm going to put it down. That's good. Increase that release. A little bit of hold time to it. Well, I guess that's pretty good. I've panned them already a little bit, so this tom is panned to the right a little bit, that one is panned to the left a bit. And they sound pretty tight. If you make your toms too tight and there's no other way to fix that, you could use a little bit of reverb on them. That really helps to sell the effect. You could, in that case, just insert the reverb behind the gate, and it will pull out that decay part a little bit. You have to tweak the settings, obviously, but that's a tip. So now it should sound a little bit cleaner. So that's a lot cleaner than what I heard in the first place. Without the gates, I can turn off all the gates, give you a quick preview. It hasn't been played so correct, but that doesn't really matter for this tutorial. You can really hear when the gates are on, it sounds a little bit more compact and a little bit cleaned up. And now I can start compressing on the tracks that I've gated. I still would probably do the snares as well, but I'm gonna leave you to that because again, that's the same idea. Just make sure that the attack is not too fast, or else it's gonna be a really sharp snare. I can try to simulate that quickly with the C1 gate. And then make it a really fast attack. So increase that attack a little bit, make it a little bit longer, and then open up the hold in the release. Oh, that one is pretty clean, so I would probably keep it like that, and then maybe the third snare, which is here. Again, I'll just use the C1 put it on the top. Tack a little bit faster. And then the release and the hold. A little bit of hold time. Now with a little bit of compression I can make this into a pretty tight sounding drum track. So a little bit of leveling here and there and a little bit of EQing and I'm pretty good to go. But obviously I really want to do these things with the rest of the instruments already, so I can hear how it will sound in the mix, and that's probably the most important when it comes down to mixing. So again, this was Wick for WickieMedia Tutorials. I hope you learned something today. If you're interested in more of our stuff, check it out right here on the channel on YouTube. We post weekly tutorials like these. So we're talking about compressors, expanders, gates, maximizers, all these things in this season. And next season is coming up quite soon, and that's going to be about filters and equalizers and these type of things. So it's going to get pretty interesting. Please subscribe to the channel so you're going to be up to date whenever I put up some new tutorials, or you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And you can check us out on the new website, which is www.wikiemedia.net.